Looking for a guaranteed way to create content that resonates with your audience? Start a podcast. Interview your ideal clients and let them choose the topic of the interview. Because if your ideal clients care about the topic, there's a good chance the rest of your audience will care about it too. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm Jonathan Green.
And I'm James Carberry.
Let's get into the show. Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. Today we are joined by Mamie Kanfer Stewart. She's a speaker and the founder and CEO of Meeteor. Mamie, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jonathan. A pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you today, particularly because we're going to be talking about something that is, I think it can be a constant thorn in the side of executives, founders, even entrepreneurs, people with small businesses. We're going to be talking today about 3 things you can do right now to improve your team meetings. But before we get into that, I would love to know a little bit more about your background and what you and your team at Meeteor are up to these days.
All right. Well, meetings are my favorite subject, even though for most people it makes them cringe. So at Meeteor, I started the company a couple of years ago, really with the goal of helping people collaborate more effectively. And we started as a software business, and I come from a family business. So my family business is called Gojo. We're the inventors of Purell hand sanitizer. And I grew up in this family business, and I thought that that's how everybody worked. The way that Gojo works is highly collaborative, very entrepreneurial, even though it's quite a large company. And when I left and kind of went out into the real workforce, I learned that not everybody knows how to run good meetings, and I was shocked. And so I wanted to take what I had learned working inside of Gojo and bring it to kind of the rest of the world to help everybody work more effectively. And so I started Meeteor. We have a software that helps teams have effective meetings and to collaborate more effectively. And we also do a lot of other things. So we have a Thriving Teams program that helps we work very closely with teams to implement the best practices for effective collaboration, getting aligned on your team values, working from a shared work plan, that kind of stuff. And then we do some speaking and consulting and other kinds of things as well related to effective meetings. So my whole world is all about how to run effective meetings, because the reality is that we lose so much time sitting in meetings that have no purpose, and I'm walking out of them feeling like, why did I just waste that hour of my life when I have 500 other things I should be doing right now?
You know, and people can kind of start to see meetings as this sort of necessary evil. You know, everyone knows that being in business, part of that is having meetings, but it's one of those things you might always sort of dread, and you think, why am I wasting this time? What is the purpose? There's got to be a better way to do this. And so that's one of the reasons we're very excited to have you on the show today. One of the points that you had made before we started recording was that you need to sort of recognize that as your business grows, your participation in meetings needs to change. Maybe you can tell us a little about that.
Absolutely. So when I started the business, it was me by myself, right, sitting in front of my computer. And now we're a dozen or so people. And over the course of time, and we're still relatively small, right? So think about a company that grows to have hundreds of thousands of employees, right? As your business grows and you get more people, you have more complexity, you have more projects, more things going on, more communications happening, and you can't be in every single meeting. So whether you're the entrepreneur who is now not able to attend every meeting, because if you attended every meeting your company had, you would have nothing else to do. You wouldn't be able to do anything else. You're just constantly in meetings, right? Or if you're running a department, or you have a big project going on, whatever is happening, as your organization is growing, you have to revisit your relationship with your meetings. And you have to start to implement practices that allow you to delegate responsibility comfortably to people to meet without you. So that was actually my favorite moment in my organization's history. It's not a sales moment, actually. It was a meeting moment when I decided I was going to stop attending all of our product meetings. And I empowered the team, and I talked to the team leader, and I said, okay, here's the plan. You plan the meetings, send me the agenda, let me know the meeting's happening. I want to see what you're going to talk about and what the goal is. And then after the meeting, send me the notes, so that I know exactly what was decided and what the conversation was about. But now in about 3 minutes, right? 3 minutes to read the agenda beforehand and less than that even, right, total to read the notes afterwards. I know exactly what happened and I didn't have to be in that meeting. So I saved that half an hour, that hour. And that having those kinds of systems in place enable you to have the trust with your teams to say, go ahead and meet without me because I have other things I need to do. And if something happens and I don't like what they're meeting about, or I feel like they're missing something, or I get the notes afterwards and I'm like, oh, I disagree with that decision, I can jump in so quickly and say, hey, team leader, fill me in on what's going on. I'm not sure I agree with this decision. And actually, this happened to me not that long ago. And I contacted the team leader of the product team, and I was like, I don't understand why this decision was made. Can you just fill me in? Because I disagree with it. He explained it to me, and I was like, oh, yeah, that is the right decision. Good job, team. And they went off on their way, right? So as you grow, as your team evolves, you have to, both as the team leader or the business leader, revisit how you're going to interact with meetings and how you're going to empower people and how you're going to have systems in place so that you can trust that they're doing the right work, they're making the right decisions, you're getting the right information flowing. And for the meeting participants, they need to be revisiting because as they get pulled into more and more meetings, as they have more responsibilities or they're working on more projects, they need to know how is information flowing. If they're out sick for the day, if they're going on vacation, how are they going to make sure that they're in the loop with those meetings? How can they feel confident that even though you as the team leader aren't there or the business leader isn't in that meeting, that the decision they make is going to stand and they can work with confidence?
Yeah. Well, and I like that. It seems that the additional benefit, something that I might not have thought about initially, is that yes, you're definitely saving yourself time, but also at the same time empowering your employees and empowering your executive team, like putting extra trust in them, which I think is great. I wouldn't have even thought about that.
Yeah, and that's such a critical part because it's really easy as an entrepreneur or as a department leader, right? You care so deeply about the work and you want to make sure everything goes really well, or at least I do. I always want to make sure we do a great job and deliver with excellence. But also we want to move quickly, right? We don't have time for me to weigh in on every single decision. So empowering your team is so critical if you want to be able to move quickly, if you want to be able to be in touch with your customers and respond quickly and make changes. And you can't always be waiting and sitting around and hoping that someone's going to read the email in which you ask a question that they're going to approve and you keep going. And I know with my family business, seeing some of the senior leaders there and their schedules, it's just back-to-back meetings all day long. And if something gets rescheduled, like you could be waiting months for that meeting to take place again. So you have to find ways to be able to move forward without always having a meeting and always being present in that particular meeting.
Yeah. And so we're definitely going to get to these 3 things you can immediately do to improve your meetings. So I don't want to jump ahead, but I do have kind of a question because it feels like it can be a difficult process, especially as an entrepreneur or someone that was used to running the show by themselves, wearing a lot of hats, starting to give up some of that control, starting to put more trust in his or her team. Do you have a strategy for deciding this is a meeting that I need to be at versus this is a meeting I can get the cliff notes on?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of the ways to start to figure out and put in place some rules that help you decide and help your team know when to include you. So a couple of the factors that I look at is this something that I have expertise in? So I am not a technologist. A lot of work that happens inside Meeteor is related to our product and technology. So if there are technical decisions that are being made, like what code should we use and should we be trying this particular framework or that plugin, there's absolutely no reason to include me in those meetings because I will have nothing to add, literally nothing to add. Mm-hmm. I just want to know, is it going to cost us more? Right? So, yeah. So the team knows that when they're coming up with ideas and solutions and they're trying to figure out how do we increase the performance quality of our site, how do we make sure we have enough storage capacity and all those kinds of things, and the security is top notch. Great, guys, go meet without me. Just tell me what the results are. Tell me what new systems we need or what changes are being made that I should know about so I can share that with customers. But I don't need to be sitting in those meetings. I'm not a valuable add to that conversation.
Yeah, that seems like a very easy way to assess, do I have some expertise in this? Am I going to be able to contribute to this meeting?
Yes, that is one big way to do it. And that really works. I mean, that's really for entrepreneurs who are kind of sitting at the top as their teams, kind of grow out underneath them. The more challenging pieces are where maybe I used to be part of those meetings and now I'm not anymore. So for a lot of our product meetings or customer success meetings where, when I didn't have a bigger staff supporting the work, I was in a lot of those meetings. I was making a lot of those decisions because we didn't have a whole lot of people to be putting their brain power towards it. And now we do. So we just had a meeting a couple of days ago on our customer support system, and 4 people met without me. And I was actually a little bit surprised they didn't invite me, but that's a good thing. It's actually a really good thing because they assessed the situation and said, we're the 4 people who address customer success from a technical support side, from a best practice kind of questions around how do we have effective meetings, or here's, a question about the product. They're the people who are addressing that. So I don't need to be in that meeting. So they sent me the agenda and they said, here's what's going on. And I said, oh, great. Like I could look at it and say, yeah, you're right. I don't need to be in this meeting because I actually don't touch that hands-on. And if I have something important to weigh in on, I will. So making sure that you can kind of check yourself and say, not only do I have something valuable to add or not, but is this really critical for my opinion? Do I trust that the people who are there are going to make a good decision without me? And if you can say, yeah, I think those are the right people, then let them run with it. The bigger decisions that I tend to say, like I need to be involved on are things that are either big business direction, like if we're changing a program or we're adding like a new component to our work, then I want to be in those conversations. So if our content team says we want to run another webinar series and I'm the one who does all of our webinars, I want to know that they want to add that to my schedule. Yeah. I want to know that's going to take to develop that content. But if they're going to, do something that they've done before, they want to try using, having 3 guest bloggers next month instead of 1, great, go for it. I don't need to be part of that decision.
All right. So Mamie, tell us then, how can meetings hinder your growth and have a negative impact on your team?
Yeah. So we all think about like the big cost of meetings as time, which is absolutely true. Time is so critical in an organization. We are all overworked and overstressed, and just coming out of meetings and feeling like you wasted time is a big lost productivity piece. But it also has takes a toll on us in our emotional state. When we're feeling stressed, when you feel like you don't have enough time to get your work done, you feel like your organization is like not respecting you as a person, you don't do your best work. When you feel like your colleagues are not respecting you because they're inviting you to meetings where you don't need to be, or you're coming out of meetings and like, I don't even know why we had that meeting, like that doesn't make me feel good about the people in the meeting with me, especially the meeting leader. And that actually impacts the morale of your team. It impacts the atmosphere that your organization is creating, right? If people are running around frenzied all the time and they're feeling super stressed and they don't feel good about the meetings they're coming out of or they're going to, that's creating an atmosphere in which people aren't thriving, which impacts their productivity, which impacts their emotional state, which, makes them want to leave your company, so your turnover rates can go up because people aren't feeling happy and healthy and thriving in that environment. They're feeling like stressed and frustrated and like, I hate my job. And meetings, because we spend so much time in meetings, they're a huge contributor to that. When you walk out of a meeting, and hopefully everyone can like recall a time where they went to a really, really good meeting. But I know when I walk out of a meeting and I feel like that was a great use of my time, we had a great conversation, I feel like I contributed and I helped that conversation, I helped whatever decision was being made or whatever next steps were being identified, like that's a great feeling. And it's possible to have that feeling, 80%, 90% of the time when you plan your meetings effectively, when you do take the right steps and you create a culture of healthy meeting practices. We've just created the opposite in our world. We've created this like epidemic of bad meetings where people feel like this was just how it is. And unfortunately, it's just part of doing business, but it just feels yucky and it has such long lasting, deep impact beyond just wasted time.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about it here. You've got 3 things that you can do right now to improve your meetings. Let's talk about some of this advice you have.
All right. So number 1 is to write a desired outcome. So at Meeteor, we say a desired outcome is what you want to achieve in the meeting, not the meeting purpose, That too often when we say, like, what's the meeting purpose, you can say, oh, it's to discuss next quarter's financial plans, or it's to review the progress on this project. We want you to get past the verb state, the to discuss, to review, to brainstorm, get into the outcome state. What is it that you want to achieve in this meeting? We want to have a revised version of this document that is now ready for someone to sign off on. Or we want a list of 3 to 5 ideas for further exploration. Or we want to have alignment on this really complicated situation and how we're going to move forward. You want to get to that outcome. If you know what the meeting's outcome is, you are way more likely to achieve it and make that meeting have a purpose and be productive.
Yep.
When you don't know what the outcome is, you're basically wasting everybody's time.
You're floundering, you're meandering, you're just kind of going through the motions. But if you have that purpose, you've got that direction. I like that.
Exactly. So that's the key idea. Now we're going to break it down into a couple of actionable steps. So number 1 of desired outcome is take a look at your calendar. Wherever you are right now, you really should just stop and look at your calendar for the next week or 2 weeks and look at every meeting on there and say, do I know what the desired outcome is for each of these meetings? Mm-hmm. We did this as a Meeteor challenge a couple weeks ago, and about 50% of the meetings that were on people's calendars, they could not clearly state the desired outcome of that meeting. So we're all going to meetings, and half the time we don't really know what we're going to be achieving in that meeting. That's not good,
no.
Right? Like that's actually, I think, a completely ridiculous thing for us all to be doing. We would never do that with our own time sitting at your desk. You would never sit there. I mean, at least hopefully you're not sitting there 50% of the time and saying, like, I don't know what I should be doing right now. Like, I'm not 100% sure what my work is, right? Like, this is ridiculous. So start by doing a little assessment. Look at your own meetings, what's on your calendar, and figure out, am I really clear about the desired outcome of this meeting? If the answer is yes, awesome. If you are the team leader for that meeting, tell the meeting participants, this is step 2, tell the participants who are coming to that meeting what your desired outcome is. So shoot them an email, add it to the calendar invite, send it to them on Slack, whatever you do. Let them know, hey guys, this is my plan for this meeting. This is what I want to achieve, and let them all know, because this does 2 things. 1, now they know the outcome of that meeting, and so when they look at their calendar, they can feel confident in why they're participating in that meeting. And secondly, if they are not the right people to be in that meeting, this is the first clue for them to say, oh, that's actually not what I thought that meeting was about. I wonder if this is a good use of my time. So this is a trick or a step for kind of down the road, is to start to create a culture in which people can actually question their meeting participation. And they can start to say, oh, I'm not sure that meeting is the best use of my time. Are there other ways I can contribute? Can I just stay informed? Can you just send me the meeting notes afterwards? But if they don't know what the purpose of the meeting is, they can't do that. So start by just sharing it out by email, let people know so that they can walk in informed.
Yeah. I mean, it almost seems to relate back to a level of trust as well. I mean, you trust your coworkers, you trust your employees to make that assessment, to be able to say, hey, I'm not sure that this is the best use of my time. Is it okay if I basically don't go to this meeting but stay informed? You have to have that level of trust and confidence.
Exactly. And that's really hard to do. It's really hard to create that level of trust with people, especially when they're part of your team and they're basically thinking, oh gosh, is my boss going to think I'm trying to get out of doing some work? I'm trying to get out of this meeting. Like, that doesn't make me look good. I don't look like a team player. But if you as the team leader start to create a culture in which you tell people, this is what this meeting's about. If you have questions, if you're not sure this is like the right meeting for you, let me know. You can also, here's like another little snippet trick, you can tell people they're optional. So if I know like these 2 people absolutely need to be in this meeting because they are critical to this work, I'm going to invite them and tell them they have to be here. But these other 3 people, their work connects, but it's maybe tangential, or maybe like I only need them for the part of the conversation, but not the whole conversation. I can let them know and say, here's the agenda. If you think this is relevant for you, or you have something to add, we'd love for you to join us. If you feel like you have other priorities, you can either send me an email with the points you want to make sure I bring into the room, and not participate at all, or just come for the section that you think is most important for you. So come for the first 15 minutes, but don't stay for the whole half hour. So you can start to really create some ownership for each person. But you have to do that as the team leader or the department leader to start to set that tone, because it's really hard for people to look up to leadership and say, I don't want to go to that meeting just because I don't think it's a good use of my time.
Yeah. And this is all falling under the umbrella of know the desired outcome for the meeting, or are these all like individual sort of best tips and practices?
These are all really good tips and practices, but these all fall under the bucket of starting with your desired outcome.
Okay, great.
All right. So tip number 2, we're going to move off the desired outcome, or at least a little bit off of it. And we're going to talk about the end of the meeting. So when you finish up the meeting, when people walk out the door, even if you've had a really fantastic conversation, if people walk out not knowing what to do next, it can feel like that meeting was a waste. Or you can feel totally like a high off that meeting, like, oh, this was great. We had a great conversation. Like, I'm so excited by the direction. And then you get back to your desk and a couple days later and you're like, wait a second, am I supposed to do anything? Or like, so what's going on with this now? Like, I don't actually know how we're going to implement that. So you need to bring closure and be intentional about how you end your meeting. So we always recommend that you reserve the last couple of minutes, could be 3 minutes, could be 5 minutes on your agenda, actually write it on your agenda for what we call a wrap-up. And during that wrap-up, you should do a couple of things. The first thing is you should acknowledge whether or not you achieved your desired outcome. So if you said, okay, our desired outcome of this meeting is to end up with a list of 3 to 5 ideas that we're going to then hand over to the other team, and they're going to take that and go run with it. And you did your brainstorm and you got to 5 ideas. Great. Say, guys, we wanted to get to 3 to 5 ideas. We got 5 ideas. I feel really good about this. Nice work, everybody. If you didn't get there, then say, we had such a great brainstorm, guys. We got 7 ideas on the table and we're running out of time. We only have a couple minutes left in our meeting. I'm not sure what we could have done differently. Does anybody have any ideas of what we could have done differently to help us get these down to 5, or anything we could do in these last few minutes to get us down to 5? And acknowledge that you didn't get there. See if there's anything you can do in the moment, or propose suggestions for what you could do. So you could say, like, we're going to take these 7. I propose we take these 7 and we hand them over, and we let that sub team be the first thing that they do is just to get down to 5. Or you can say, like, I think we should just vote right now. Or maybe we should follow up this with email and take a vote by email. But acknowledge you didn't get there and figure out what are you going to do to get to that point, because you still need to achieve that result. It's not like, well, the meeting ended and we didn't achieve it, so, oh, well. No, you still have to get that result because you still need the work to move forward.
Right.
And what you don't want, like the worst case scenario, is that you don't acknowledge it and then life just goes on and then it's like floundering and work can't happen. The second worst case scenario is that you say, all right, well, I guess we have to have another meeting about this.
Everyone's hooray, another meeting.
Right? That's the worst thing. Nobody wants to have more meetings. So if you can figure out a way in those last couple minutes to acknowledge that you didn't achieve your goal, how are you going to get it done? And hopefully it's not have another meeting, because hopefully you did the heavy lifting already and now it's just, snapping it shut. So if there's an alternative to another meeting, take it. And see if there's anything you can do differently. Is it that you actually just didn't have enough time? You didn't plan your agenda properly and you ran out of time because you didn't calculate the right amount of time for each piece of the agenda? Or is it that, people were going off on tangents and you ended up spinning your wheels a lot and nobody was facilitating the conversation or keeping time and paying attention? Like, oh my gosh, we spent 25 minutes talking about this one idea and we actually didn't get to the other ideas because we just kept talking about this one thing. Try and get people to recognize what's going on and why you're not achieving your goals.
Okay.
So the other piece of the wrap-up, and this is also part of tip 2, the other piece of the wrap-up, I'm giving you so much good stuff here.
There is a lot of great content here.
Oh, yeah. So the other piece is to acknowledge what the next steps are. So this was the decision that was made. Here are the 3 next steps that we're going to do. Mamie is going to, take these ideas and type them up and turn them over to the, other marketing sub-team. Jonathan is going to follow up with the vendor and get those additional quotes, whatever it is. Make sure that you've acknowledged exactly what the next steps are, what decisions are made, and who is going to be responsible for them. I love to say we have this notorious we who lives in every organization. We should, make sure we get another copy of that, or, let's follow up with that other team and, see what they have to say. And just the we and the let's and those are not action items. An action item isn't a complete action item And it's not a next step until somebody's taking ownership of it.
Yeah.
And if you assign that ownership, that item to somebody who's not on the team, who's not in that meeting, you better make sure that somebody in that meeting is going to make sure that other person knows about it. Because that's a killer. When you are like, okay, so I know Ty isn't in this meeting, but she's the person who handles this, so she'll get that information. If she doesn't know about it, there's no way she's going to do that action item. And that's not her fault. So you want the people in the meeting to take ownership over those next steps. And the easiest way to do that is make sure you wrap up at the end of the meeting, acknowledge what those next steps are and who's going to do them.
Okay, great.
All right. So tip number 3, and this is on a little different level, but tip number 3 is to bring awareness to your team that you're having problems with your meetings. So the first 2 things I mentioned around using a desired outcome and a wrap-up are things that you could do on your own if you're the meeting leader. And there are ways you can do them if you're a meeting participant. So if you don't have control over the meetings, you can still ask the meeting leader, like, hey, if we're having this meeting, I just want to get clear about, what you hope to achieve in this meeting.
Right.
Or you can start at the beginning of the meeting by saying, like, guys, I know we're about to get started in this meeting. I just wanted to ask, what are we hoping to accomplish by the end of our 30 minutes together? So there are things that you can do, whether you're a meeting leader or a meeting participant, that are on you.
Even at the end of the meeting, I wasn't clear on what my action items are.
Exactly. Or can somebody just do a quick recap of, what we decided? Because I want to make sure that I am fully understanding it. Mm-hmm. Right? You can ask. You can create that space by taking your own action. But that's only one piece of the puzzle, right? Like when you have a meeting, there are lots of people in that meeting. And the more that the entire team is aware and thinking about and trying to have productive meetings, the more success you're going to have as a team in terms of improving your meetings, improving the morale, improving the productivity. So the last piece is that if you feel comfortable, and not everybody does, it really depends on their team culture and their role and the company and all those other factors. But if you feel comfortable, introduce this idea to your team and say, hey guys, I just listened to this podcast and it was super fascinating. This woman was talking about effective meetings, and I think that she had some great practices that we could try. When you get other people involved, you are more likely to have success. They will help keep you accountable. You can help keep them accountable, right? You don't have to be the only one now trying to move this whole ship, right? Because it's kind of like turning a giant boat when you're talking about changing some of the deeply rooted, challenging meeting behaviors. When you get other people involved, they'll help you. So we always like to encourage people to come to our blog and read about best practices and share them with your team, or share this podcast. Do those kinds of things that start to get other people to be aware, because the reality is everybody knows meeting sucks. You're not telling them something new. What you're doing is you're telling them there's actually a solution, and it's really not that hard.
Yep. And speaking of following up, speaking of your blog, Mamie, if anyone in our audience is interested in following up, learning more about the incredible things that you and your team at Meeteor are doing, or they have questions about the podcast, or just want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
Yeah, we got lots of ways for you to connect. So best place to go to get more information about Meeteor is our website. It's meeteor.com. And we have lots of information about our web apps that help you have effective meetings using technology. We have our blog where we write about team best practices and meeting best practices and collaboration. We have an events page. Well, we have a couple events coming up, so we're doing a webinar series. We have a New York live workshop, The Fundamentals of Effective Meetings. So you can come and work with me directly, and I'll teach you all kinds of practices and how to put them into place. And we have a Thriving Teams program where we work closely with your team over the course of a year and help you implement these kinds of practices for meetings, for work plans, etc. So all kinds of cool stuff you can find out there. You can follow us on Twitter at MeteorHQ, and you can go to my personal website, MamieKS, MAMIEKS.com. If you're interested in more of the stuff that I've talked about or write about, you can see some of my speeches and things there. And for anyone who's listening to this podcast, if you want a discount on any of our services, just shoot us an email or in the contact form and let us know that you heard us here on the B2B Marketing Podcast, and we will get you set up with a 10% discount.
Fantastic. Mamie Kanfer Stewart, again, thank you so much for taking some time to have this one-on-one meeting with me here on the show today. Really appreciate having you on the show.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
If you've been getting value from this podcast, you can help us reach more people by reviewing the show on iTunes. Here's how you can leave a review in less than a minute. Open your podcast app and tap the search icon in the bottom right corner. Type in B2B growth, then select our show. Once you're there, tap the reviews tab and tell us what you think of the show. These reviews help us out a ton.
Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.